Hello class, let's wrap up the week 3 HTML topic with some audio and video elements so we can add some sound and some video playback to our web pages. They're just tags like any of the other tags we've seen, and they're pretty easy to implement. And we have them listed here in section 3.5, and we'll take a quick look at the audio element first, and then we'll jump over to the video element. And just as a point of interest here, so the audio element has a source, which is the source of the file that we're going to play, and it also has some attributes, and these are the 4 attributes: autoplay, controls, loop, and muted. So these are a little different in that if you see the attribute present in the tag, that's an indication that that option is on, hence it's a Boolean attribute. So for the audio element, we have some controls such as autoplay. We have controls, which prints a little play button icon widget kind of thing on the screen. I'll show you in a second. Loop, which will just repeat the audio over and over, and mute will initially mute the audio. And you could see here is the actual code that we use. And you could see from the Boolean attributes we have controls enabled, and that's it. If your browser does not display or is not able to play audio, this is some other text that will be shown in its place instead. So let's copy this code over into our lab, and I've already started it up so we don't have to jump around too much. And why don't we put it up top so we can see it a little bit easier. So I'm going to take it and give us some more room, and I'll put it right here under header. How about that? And we're going to line it up a little bit so it's in line with the rest of the code. Always good to have things in a nice, clean, orderly fashion. And now you see here's our audio that has been included into our page. So the controls widget is this little oval shaped icon here with the play button, the time of the audio, the maximum, the length of the audio, and we have a position bar so you can jump to a different time in the audio, the mute button, and a little, playback speed if you want to play it faster or slower, download, etc. Depending on your browser, you may have some slightly different options. I could press play, but you won't be able to hear it, so I'm not going to do that. Actually, I will, so you could see that it is counting up and playing, and I will confirm that I do hear it, and it is a jazzy little tune, so give it a try. Let me pause it. So, again, we have the controls, and if I take out controls, and we just have audio by itself, and it renders, it doesn't really show anything down here. We don't even know that there's an audio tag in there. So control seems to be a pretty important one to have in there. And we can put a loop in there. So if it does play and we jump to the end a little bit, you see it jumps right back to the beginning and restarts. With 2 seconds to go, 1, 0, and restarts. So loop does what it says. If we do muted, and we start it, you could see the audio icon is muted, and the last one we have is autoplay. And we'll put autoplay in there, and it is playing, but it is muted, and it will play forever muted, so it's kind of a weird combination, but that's all your audio combinations that we have here. And you could put in any MP3 file you want, and there are other audio types. MP3 is the pretty common standard. You just put your URL in and it will play it. I'm going to pause it because there's no point in playing a muted song over and over. And you could see here in the textbook, you could see the different types of audio formats that are available to be played. Keep in mind that your browser may or may not play some of these. MP3 is a pretty common one, so is AAC. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So that's your audio element. Next up is video, and it's very similar in formatting. It's got the video tag, it's got your Boolean attributes, same 4 as audio, but now we have a 5th one, width. So we can specify the width of the video playback. Not necessary for audio, as it doesn't take up any real estate on the screen. But the width of the playback will be the width of the video that we can see. And we'll put an example in here, and here's what it looks like in our textbook, but we'll take it and we'll put it in our lab. And I'll jump over and I'll put it right after audio. I'll give it video. And we'll line it up and make it look nice and pretty, because we want it to be able to be easy to read and look at later. I'm going to take off loop off the audio, and I'm going to take off autoplay off and I'll take off muted as well. I might as well just stick with control, same as the book has. So you could see here is our video rendering. Since we did not put any breaks in there, I'll put a break in now. So it shows up on a different line. There it is. You could see we have our audio followed by our video. And if we press play, we can actually see it. And there is sound with it. You won't be able to hear it through the recording here, but you could see it's playing, and it is the sound of a subway car moving through the station. And you could pause it. And you can see the width of it is 500. I can change the width. If I make it 400, it'll re-render. It'll be a little bit smaller, and so on. And then you have your audio controls, you have your full screen control, and you have your ability to download and get a picture-in-picture. Again, some of these are browser dependent. Okay, so let's jump back to our book and see what else we have in here. We have the explanation of the standard video standards that we can be using. MP4, M4A are pretty common. And then we have some other formats as well. Again, keep an eye on your browser, make sure it can play the ones you want to play. It's always good to stick with a pretty common standard, since when we create a web page, we don't know what kind of device the user will be using to play back this web page or play back this audio and video. I'm personally right now using a Windows 10 PC. I have a Windows 11 PC. I know some people have Macs and MacBooks. There might be some Linux devices out there. You have your mobile devices too. You have your phones, your iPhones, or your Samsung phones, or any other kind of phones, or Android phones. So it's always good to keep an open mind on what video formats or what audio formats you want to play. Don't pick something that is very common or very restrictive to the device you're using to test. Make sure it's a standard that is available to everybody. So there is one more thing we can do, and this is specific to video sharing sites such as YouTube. There's another tag we could use called an iframe, and that is another way of embedding a video into your web page, and it shows you how to use this with the URL that YouTube provides with the special coding that identifies your videos. So like I said, we're going to use the iframe element, and we are going to build out a width and a height, and we are going to give it a YouTube source. So I'm going to copy this code as is, and we're going to place it into our test lab and see what it looks like. We can append things to the URL to do something similar to how the audio or video controls do, such as autoplay. We can turn on autoplay, or we can add it to the attributes. Allow equals autoplay to the iframe. So depending on how you want to code it, you have two options here. But let's just stick with this basic example, and we'll put this video underneath the existing video, and again, we'll line things up. And here's your iframe, and here's your closing iframe. We'll put that on the same line, and there it is. How Finding Nemo should have ended. All right, so I'll let you watch that at your leisure. But this is it. This is how you can embed a YouTube video. And if you wanted to change the height and the width, you can change them. And let's see what happens if we change the width to, it was 460. Let's change it to, well, 640. Just change it to a different number. And you can see it does change the size of the video. Get a little more room here, a little more room here. And if we change it back to our 460, we'll get the original resolution. And you can see it does kind of adjust and scale to fit the size of the window. So it's good to have these in the same proportions if possible. Like if I change the height to 500, I'm doubling the height, but I'm not touching the width. You see it's all chopped up now, so you're not seeing the full video. So it's good to keep it in proportion. And there you go. We can now build it with, instead of a video element, we have an iframe element, which we can specify a height and a width and a source. And that's another way of doing it. Okay, last thing I want to talk about for this week is just some guidelines of how to write HTML. Now that we've been writing it for a little while, let's see how we should be writing it. Some guidelines. Use closing tag. So if your element has an opening tag, make sure you use a closing tag. It gives here a specific example with the P tag that not a closing P tag isn't necessarily needed, but it's always good to include it, just following the standard of programming. Avoid self-closing tags. So it says do not use the BR space / tag. Now that is commonly used, but it's better to use just the BR tag as it was designed to be used. Use quotes for attribute values. So when we give an attribute such as value equals start, make sure you're using double quotes to specify the parameter. It's not required, but it makes much more sense and much easier to read, especially when you have something like this where you have an extra space, which may cause issues. And it's also good to use double quotes versus single quotes. And I know in earlier demos I did use single quotes, but I have since fixed that. Going forward, we will only be using double quotes to wrap our attributes and our values. Use the Boolean attributes. So make sure you use them to give the functionality that you want to use and know how they work. When a Boolean attribute is present, that option or that value or that functionality is now present in your tag, such as the checked attribute for checkboxes. This would give a checkbox the default value of a check versus unchecked. And then we just saw how the loop and the autoplay and the muted tags work for audio. So if they're present, it's on. If they're not present, it is off. We never talked about this, but all tags should be lowercase. Do not use uppercase tags. It is not recommended. All tags and attributes are lowercase. And since HTML is an interpreted language, it ignores a lot of the white space between tags. The white space we put in is for us so we can be able to read it a lot easier, and to be a lot more supportable when changes are needed. So start things on new lines, indent when necessary for consistency, and here's some examples of proper indenting versus improper indenting. Be consistent. See, these P tags here are not consistent. Over here on the right, they're not indented at all. It's a little harder to read. Just taking a quick look at this, you can see it's an ordered list, and you can instantly see where the two items are. Over here on this side, you can see where the heading section is, where the body section is, and you can see the whole thing is wrapped in an HTML section. So make sure you indent when you're nesting items in there. This next section talks about a little bit about CSS and how we should and should not use CSS versus using styles versus classes. We'll get into that next week, so don't worry about that too much. And there are some good HTML validators to make sure your code is accurate. There's a link here. There's some other ones out there. It's just, you could just search for HTML online editor and validator, and you'll see a lot of good choices. I'll post some of the ones I kind of like in the resources section. And I think that is about it for this week. So a short little video for this one. So we're going to wrap up with HTML. Doesn't mean we're done with it for the class. We're just done with the informational part of HTML. Starting next week, we'll start looking at CSS and how we can add that to our HTML documents to jazz up these plain text pages that we have here, and finally add some color and some shading and some images and make it look a little more professional. So that's coming up next. That's it for this week. Good luck, and if you have any problems, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'll be seeing you guys next week.